True scary stories from Reddit. Creepypasta tales of haunted hotels you should never visit. The allure of a hotel stay is simple, yet irresistible. A temporary escape from the monotony of life. A place where you're waited on, and your only responsibility is to relax. But what if those pristine lobbies, plush beds, and sparkling pools concealed something darker? Something so insidious, it could turn a weekend getaway into your worst nightmare? Haunted hotels. They're the perfect blend of comfort and terror, where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur in the flickering light of a chandelier. From abandoned corridors that echo with unseen footsteps to rooms where guests check in but never check out, haunted hotels have long fascinated and horrified those brave or foolish enough to stay. Reddit threads brim with accounts of unexplained encounters. Icy drafts in locked rooms, objects moving on their own, whispers in the dark. And then there are the more infamous cases, like the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, where strange deaths and ghostly sightings have turned its reputation into a legend of dread. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're warnings wrapped in mystery. Imagine this. You receive an invitation to an exclusive hotel. The kind you'd only dream of staying in, luxury beyond comprehension. A stay completely free of charge. The only condition? You must spend a few nights there alone. At first, you brush off the oddness. Who wouldn't be thrilled? But as the elevator doors slide shut and the light over the button for your floor flickers, you wonder, why you? And what waits for you when the elevator reaches its destination? These stories are about more than ghostly apparitions or inexplicable phenomena. They delve into the heart of fear itself. How isolation can distort our perceptions, how the promise of luxury can blind us to danger, and how curiosity can lead us straight into the jaws of the unknown. Because haunted hotels aren't just about what goes bump in the night. They're about what's left behind, the things we don't see but can still feel, the echoes of past guests who never truly left. What would you do if a hotel offered you the stay of a lifetime, only to realize you might not leave alive? Would you ignore the warnings, dismiss the creeping dread as overactive imagination, and stay the night? Or would you pack your bags and run, even if it meant losing the chance at a dream vacation? But here's the thing about fear. It doesn't always make sense. It's not logical or linear. It's a shadow at the edge of your vision, a whisper you can't quite make out, a feeling that something isn't right even though nothing has gone wrong. Yet, these stories, as chilling as they are, aren't just about ghosts. They're about the things we carry with us. Guilt, regret, longing, and the decisions that lead us to the very places we should avoid. And if you think you'd know better, if you think you'd make the rational choice, you might be surprised. Because fear doesn't just haunt, it seduces. It draws you in with promises of answers, of discovery, of knowing the unknowable. And by the time you realize the price, it's often too late. So, dear reader, let me tell you two stories. They're true, or as true as such stories can be, passed down through whispers and warnings, each detail more unsettling than the last. They might make you reconsider that next weekend getaway, or maybe they'll just make you double-check the locks on your hotel room door. Either way, I promise this, you'll never look at a hotel the same way again. After all, some rooms you check into, but you never really check out. Story 1. The Hidden Door. It started with an email, a golden ticket of sorts. The subject line read, "Congratulations, you've won an exclusive getaway to Whispering Pines Resort." At first, both Liz and I thought it was spam, but the details seemed legitimate. Whispering Pines Resort was a name we recognized, a sleek, newly renovated luxury retreat nestled high in the mountains, known for its breathtaking views and unmatched hospitality. Liz, ever the skeptic, called the contact number provided, and to our surprise, the reservation was confirmed. A 2-night stay in one of their premium suites, complete with complimentary meals and access to all amenities. Who even enters these things? Liz joked as we packed. I shrugged. It didn't matter. A free trip was a free trip. When we arrived, the resort was even more impressive than the photos. The driveway wound through dense pine trees, opening up to reveal an ultramodern structure of glass and stone. The lobby was expansive, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the mountains beyond. A massive crystal chandelier hung above a sleek reception desk, where uniformed staff greeted us with mechanical smiles. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," the receptionist said, her voice as polished as her appearance. Yet there was something disquieting about her gaze, too fixed, too rehearsed. Liz noticed it too, leaning over to whisper, "Feels like a Step Forward Wives audition." We laughed it off, but as we were escorted to our suite, a heaviness settled in. The hallways were eerily silent, the kind of quiet that seemed unnatural. Even the plush carpet beneath our feet felt like it absorbed every sound. Our room, however, was stunning. A spacious suite with a king-sized bed, a private balcony overlooking the forest, and a bathroom that looked like it belonged in a celebrity's mansion. Yet, despite the luxury, an inexplicable sense of unease crept over me. Liz brushed it off, as she always did. "You've got that look," she said, unpacking her bag. "What look?" "The one that says you're overthinking. Relax. It's just a hotel." I tried, but as night fell, the atmosphere grew heavier. The shadows in the room seemed deeper, more defined. Around midnight, Liz nudged me awake. "Do you hear that?" I blinked, groggy. "Hear what?" "Scratching. Like claws on wood." I strained to listen. At first, there was nothing. Then, faintly, a sound scratch, 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 emanating from somewhere in the room. "It's probably just mice," I muttered, though the explanation didn't feel right. Liz frowned. "In a place like this? I doubt it." We turned on the lights, searching for the source. But everything seemed normal. No signs of rodents, no visible damage. Eventually, we chalked it up to the building settling or an overactive imagination. Still, I couldn't shake the oppressive feeling in the room. The air felt thick, almost tangible, pressing against my chest. Liz, on the other hand, shrugged it off and was asleep within minutes. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to rationalize the unease gnawing at me. But the more I tried to dismiss it, the more it seemed to grow. Something about this place was wrong. I just didn't know it yet. The scratching returned the next night, louder and more insistent. This time it wasn't just noise, it was a rhythm. Scratch, pause, scratch, pause. The pattern was deliberate, calculated, as if whatever was making the sound wanted to be heard. Liz shot upright in bed, her face pale in the moonlight filtering through the sheer curtains. "I knew it wasn't mice," she whispered, her voice trembling but laced with determination. Without waiting for me, she threw back the covers and started searching the room. "Liz," I hissed, my own fear tightening in my chest. "Can't this wait until morning?" She didn't answer. Instead, she moved to the nightstand and began pulling it away from the wall. The heavy piece groaned against the carpet as she strained to move it. And then she froze. "What is it?" I asked, creeping closer. "There's a door," she said, her voice barely audible. Behind the nightstand, partially obscured by peeling wallpaper, was a small, square door. It looked like it belonged in a dollhouse, no more than 3 feet high, with a rusted handle and a frame smeared with dark stains. "Don't touch it," I blurted, but Liz was already crouching down, her fingers brushing the handle. The moment she made contact, a metallic, almost chemical smell filled the room, sharp and invasive. My stomach churned. "This explains the noise," Liz said, almost to herself. "Something's been moving in there." "Something?" I echoed, my voice rising. "That's exactly why we shouldn't open it." But Liz was past listening. With a soft creak, the door opened inward, revealing a narrow, pitch-black tunnel. The smell intensified, mingling with something fouler, rot maybe. My gag reflex kicked in, but Liz didn't seem to notice. She was transfixed. A small flashlight from her phone illuminated the space. The walls of the tunnel were crude, jagged, and uneven, as though they had been hastily carved. Streaks of something dark and sticky ran along the sides, and the ground was littered with debris. Shards of broken wood, scraps of fabric, and what looked like bones. Small bones. "Okay, that's enough," I said, grabbing her arm. "We're telling the staff about this." "Wait!" Liz shrugged me off, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and excitement. "Don't you want to know what's down there?" "No, Liz, I don't. And neither should you." But she wouldn't budge. That night, Liz couldn't stop talking about the door and the tunnel. "What do you think it's for?" she asked, pacing the room like a caged animal. "Storage? An old access shaft? Something more sinister? Does it matter?" I snapped, trying to keep my own nerves in check. "The point is, we shouldn't mess with it." But Liz was relentless. She theorized aloud, turning the discovery into an obsession. Every creak of the building, every flicker of the lights, every shift in the shadows became part of some elaborate mystery she was determined to solve. And it wasn't just her words. Liz was changing. She seemed distracted, her focus narrowing to the point where she barely acknowledged me anymore. Her eyes had a hollow look, dark circles forming beneath them. Her skin seemed paler, as though she hadn't slept in weeks. "Liz," I pleaded on the second night, "please, let's just leave. Whatever's in that tunnel, it's not for us to find." Her gaze snapped to mine, sharp and almost unrecognizable. "Don't you see? That's exactly why we have to stay. No one else is looking into this. It's up to us." Her words chilled me. Up to us? It felt as though she was speaking for someone or something else entirely. I tried everything to convince her to leave. I packed our bags, begged her to get in the car, even threatened to call the police. But she wouldn't move. The scratching continued every night. It grew louder, more frantic, until it sounded like whatever was on the other side of that door was clawing to get out. Liz only became more obsessed, spending hours staring at the tunnel, muttering theories to herself. I didn't know what scared me more, the door, the tunnel, or the person Liz was becoming. The night was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural, as though the entire world was holding its breath. Liz sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, her eyes locked on the small door behind the nightstand. Her face was unreadable, her posture unnervingly still. "Liz," I called softly, but she didn't respond. Her fixation on the door made my skin crawl. I placed a hesitant hand on her shoulder, but she didn't even flinch. "You need to sleep," I urged, my voice trembling. This isn't healthy." Finally, she turned to me, her expression blank, her eyes hollow. "It's calling me," she whispered. A shiver ran down my spine. "What is—" "Liz, you're scaring me." But she didn't answer. She turned back to the door, her body tense and unmoving. Exhaustion finally overtook me as I lay in bed, but the last image I saw before sleep claimed me was Liz sitting there, motionless, staring at the hidden door. Morning came with a jolt of unease. The first thing I noticed was the absence of Liz's presence. Her side of the bed was untouched, still neatly made. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room. "Liz," I called out, my voice echoing off the walls. Her luggage sat in the corner, untouched. Her phone, wallet, and jacket lay on the nightstand, as though she had only stepped out for a moment. But the room felt wrong, empty or colder. Panic set in as I approached the door behind the nightstand. It was ajar, the small, dark tunnel yawning open. A faint metallic scent lingered in the air, sharp and sickening. "Liz!" I shouted, crouching by the opening. My voice disappeared into the blackness, swallowed whole. With shaking hands, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The tunnel stretched further than I'd thought, its jagged walls slick with some unidentifiable substance. Dark streaks ran along the floor, faint but unmistakable blood. I hesitated at the threshold, every instinct screaming at me to turn back. But Liz was in there. I had to find her. The air inside was stifling, thick with the stench of decay. Each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of dread pressing down on my chest. The light from my phone flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that danced and leaped with every movement. "Liz," I called again, my voice trembling. A whisper. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakably human. My breath hitched. "Liz?" The whisper came again, clearer this time, but it wasn't her voice. It was layered, an unnerving chorus of different tones, all speaking in a language I couldn't understand. I pressed on, my heartbeat a deafening drum in my ears. The tunnel began to narrow, forcing me to crouch. My phone's light illuminated a series of crude carvings on the walls, symbols that felt ancient and ominous, their meaning lost, but their intent unmistakably malicious. Then I saw it. A smear of fresh blood led to a small alcove. Inside was something that made my stomach lurch, a tattered piece of Liz's shirt soaked in crimson. I stumbled back, my vision blurring with tears. "Liz!" I screamed, my voice breaking. The whispers grew louder, almost mocking, echoing around me as though the tunnel itself was alive. I ran. The tunnel seemed endless, twisting and turning in unnatural ways. My hands scraped against the jagged walls, the blood from my palms mingling with the unknown stains. Finally, a faint light appeared ahead. I burst out into the open air, gasping. The exit led to a desolate alley behind the hotel, hidden behind a pile of debris. I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. Liz was gone. I stumbled back into the hotel, desperate for answers. The lobby was eerily calm, the staff behind the desk smiling as though nothing had happened. "My friend is missing," I said, my voice shaking. "She disappeared from our room. There's a tunnel behind the nightstand." The receptionist's smile didn't waver. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's no record of anyone else staying with you. Are you sure you're feeling all right?" "What? No. She was with me. Liz, check the room." The manager appeared, his demeanor calm but firm. "Sir, we have no tunnels in our rooms. Perhaps you're mistaken. If you're feeling unwell, we can call someone to assist you." It was like speaking to a wall. They wouldn't acknowledge Liz, the door, or the tunnel. It was as though none of it had ever existed. I left the hotel that day, my heart heavy with unanswered questions and a gnawing sense of paranoia. I reported Liz's disappearance to the authorities, but they found no trace of her. The hotel staff denied ever seeing her, their records conspicuously absent of her name. The world moved on, but I couldn't. Nightmares plagued me, filled with whispers and tunnels that stretched endlessly into the dark. I avoided hotels altogether, the mere thought of them sending waves of panic through me. And yet, a part of me wonders, what if I had stayed longer? What if I had gone deeper into that tunnel? The hidden door was gone when I returned to the hotel months later, desperate for closure. The staff had changed, the room remodeled, but the whispers still haunt me. And sometimes late at night, I think I hear scratching. Story 2. The Room That Doesn't Exist. Sarah and Mark stepped into the grand lobby of Sunset Manor, their excitement palpable. The secluded hotel was tucked away in a dense forest, the kind of place that promised romance, tranquility, and a break from the mundane. It was their 5th anniversary, and Sarah had insisted they splurge on something memorable. "Welcome to Sunset Manor," the receptionist greeted warmly. She was an older woman with silver hair pinned neatly back, her smile kind but oddly stiff. "We hope your stay will be unforgettable." Mark chuckled. "That's what we're aiming for." After checking in, the receptionist's smile widened. "It seems you're in luck. We're offering a complimentary upgrade to room 616, the best room in the house. Consider it our anniversary gift to you." Sarah and Mark exchanged delighted looks. Who were they to argue with luxury? The first thing they noticed upon entering room 616 was the view. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a mist-covered lake, the water glistening in the pale sunlight. The room was spacious and elegant, with antique furniture, a 4-poster bed, and a faint aroma of lavender. "This is perfect," Sarah said, spinning around. But as Mark carried their bags in, a chill ran through him. The room was unnaturally cold, the kind of cold that seeped into your bones no matter how many layers you wore. "Is the AC cranked up or something?" Mark muttered, fiddling with the thermostat. "It's probably just the old building," Sarah replied, brushing off his concern. As they unpacked, Sarah noticed faint scratches on the walls near the headboard. "Do you think they had a cat in here or something?" she joked, running her fingers over the marks. Mark frowned. "Doubt it. These look deliberate." Sarah shrugged. "It's an old place. Let's not let a few scratches ruin the vibe." That night, as they lay in bed, Mark couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. The room was silent except for the faint creaks of the old building settling. Yet something felt off. "Do you hear that?" Mark whispered. Sarah stirred. Hear what? Scratching. They both listened intently, but the sound had stopped. Mark sighed, chalking it up to his imagination. Sarah, half asleep, mumbled, You're overthinking. Go to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily for Mark. His dreams were restless, filled with shadowy figures and a voice whispering his name. The next morning, Mark woke to find Sarah staring at the mirror across the room. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with confusion. What's wrong? He asked, sitting up. She pointed at the mirror. I swear I saw something. Someone. Mark rubbed his eyes, trying to shake off his grogginess. Probably just a trick of the light. Sarah didn't look convinced, but didn't press the issue. They decided to bring up their concerns to the hotel staff. Down in the lobby, the receptionist greeted them with the same stiff smile. Is there something wrong with room 616? Mark asked. The walls are scratched up, and it's freezing in there. The receptionist's smile faltered for a split second before returning. Room 616 is one of our finest rooms. Any discomfort you've experienced is likely due to the building's age. Rest assured, there's nothing wrong. Sarah frowned. If you'd like, the receptionist interrupted, we can send someone up to check the room. Her tone left no room for argument, and Sarah and Mark reluctantly returned upstairs. Later that day, a maintenance worker arrived to inspect the room. He was a burly man with a gruff demeanor, but even he seemed uneasy as he entered. He ran his hands over the scratched walls, checked the vents, and even tapped on the floorboards. Find anything? Mark asked. The man hesitated. Nothing to worry about, he said quickly, gathering his tools. Let me know if you need anything else. As he left, Sarah caught the fleeting look in his eyes, one of fear. What was that about? She asked. Mark shook his head. I don't know, but something's definitely not right here. That night, the scratching returned. This time, it was louder, more insistent. Mark, Sarah whispered, clutching his arm. It's coming from the walls. Mark turned on the lamp, illuminating the room. The scratches on the walls seemed deeper, more pronounced, as though they'd multiplied overnight. The air felt heavy, oppressive, and then they heard it, a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Get out! Mark and Sarah froze, their hearts pounding. We need to leave, Mark said, grabbing their bags. But as they reached the door, it wouldn't budge. The knob twisted but wouldn't turn. It was as though the room itself was holding them captive. Sarah's breathing quickened. What's happening? Why won't it open? The whisper came again, louder this time. Get out if you can. Their eyes darted to the scratches on the wall, which now seemed to form patterns, words. Mark's stomach dropped as he realized what they spelled out. Leave. Now. But how? The room wouldn't let them go. The atmosphere in room 616 grew heavier with each passing day, as though the very air was conspiring against Sarah and Mark. The once cozy room now felt suffocating, its shadows darker, its silence unnerving. On their second night, Sarah jolted awake. The room was dark, save for the faint glow of moonlight through the curtains. She sat up, straining to hear what had disturbed her. Whispers, soft, unintelligible murmurs seemed to echo from inside the walls. Sarah turned to Mark, shaking him awake. Do you hear that? She hissed. Mark groggily rubbed his eyes. Hear what? Listen. The whispers grew clearer, though still incomprehensible. It was as if a crowd of people were speaking just out of earshot. Mark sat up, his pulse quickening. Where is that coming from? Sarah pointed to the wall near the bed. The whispers seemed to emanate from within, like voices trapped in the very structure of the building. Mark grabbed his phone, turning on the flashlight. He pressed his ear to the wall, his breath hitching. The murmurs stopped abruptly, replaced by an eerie silence. It's probably the pipes, he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Sarah didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the scratches on the wall. They seemed deeper now, more deliberate, as though someone or something had been clawing at them in desperation. The next day, Mark decided to investigate. He couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the oppressive sense that they weren't alone in room 616. While Sarah rested, Mark wandered the hotel, hoping to distract himself. He struck up a conversation with one of the housekeepers, a young woman named Elena. Elena, he began cautiously. What do you know about room 616? Elena's face paled. She glanced around nervously before leaning in. You shouldn't be staying there. Why not? Mark pressed. It's not safe, she whispered. No one is supposed to stay in that room. What do you mean? Elena hesitated, as though weighing the risk of speaking further. Finally, she said, room 616 doesn't exist. It's not on the hotel's blueprints. It shouldn't even be there. Mark frowned. But it's real. I'm staying there. Her voice trembled. That room has a history. Guests go missing. The ones who make it out, they're never the same. Mark returned to the room, his mind racing. He found Sarah sitting on the edge of the bed, clutching her phone tightly. What's wrong? He asked. She looked up, her face pale. I've been researching this place. There are stories, Reddit threads, news articles. People have stayed in room 616 before, and almost all of them disappeared. Mark sat beside her, his heart pounding. And the ones who didn't? They talked about shadows, whispers, feeling like they were being watched. Mark's stomach churned. Elena said the room isn't on the hotel's blueprints. It's like it doesn't exist. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with fear. Then how is it here? Determined to uncover the truth, the couple began scouring the room for clues. Mark moved furniture, checked behind curtains, and tapped on the walls. Sarah sifted through drawers and checked beneath the bed. In the closet, they found an old guest book buried under a pile of dusty linens. Its leather cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with age. Mark opened it cautiously, flipping through the pages. Names and dates filled the book, each entry meticulously written. Look at this, he said, pointing to a series of entries. These people all stayed in room 616. Sarah leaned in, her brow furrowed. What happened to them? Mark flipped to the back of the book, where the entries abruptly stopped. The last one read, Anna Williams, checked in July 12, 2012. Never checked out. That night, the room felt more sinister than ever. Mark and Sarah sat on the bed, too afraid to sleep. As the hours dragged on, Mark noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. A shadow darted across the room, too fast to be explained by passing headlights or shifting moonlight. Did you see that? He whispered. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide. It's been happening all night. The whispers returned, louder this time. They seemed to come from every direction, a cacophony of voices pleading, crying, and screaming. Sarah clutched Mark's arm. We have to leave. Mark nodded, but deep down he feared it was already too late. The tension in room 616 was unbearable by their last night. Mark and Sarah huddled together, their belongings packed and ready for a hasty departure at dawn. Sleep was out of the question. The air itself seemed alive, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. I keep thinking I hear something, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Like footsteps, pacing just outside the door. Mark nodded. He had heard them too, but there was no one in the hallway when he checked. We'll leave first thing in the morning, he assured her, though his own resolve wavered. The clock ticked past 3 a.m. when it happened. Sarah, lying beside Mark, suddenly jerked upright. Her eyes widened in terror, staring at something in the dark corner of the room. Do you see that? She gasped. Mark turned, but there was nothing. Sarah, there's nothing there. Before he could finish, Sarah screamed. An unseen force yanked her from the bed, dragging her across the floor as she clawed at the carpet, kicking and crying out for help. Mark, help me, she shrieked. Mark lunged, grabbing her arms and pulling with all his strength. But she was wrenched from his grip as though an invisible hand had seized her. Her screams echoed as she was dragged toward the wardrobe, its doors swinging open of their own accord. Mark rushed forward, but the moment Sarah disappeared into the wardrobe, the doors slammed shut. He pounded on them, shouting her name, but there was no answer. Sarah, he yelled, his voice breaking. Open the door! Sarah! The wardrobe creaked open slowly, revealing only darkness within. Desperate, Mark grabbed his phone and shone the flashlight inside. He expected to see the back of the wardrobe, but instead, there was a narrow passageway, its walls lined with peeling wallpaper and cobwebs. Mark hesitated for only a moment before stepping inside, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the oppressive darkness. The passage twisted and turned, the air growing colder with each step. Faint whispers echoed around him, calling his name in voices that weren't Sarah's. Finally, he stumbled into a small room at the end of the passage. It was cluttered with old belongings, a dusty trunk, a broken rocking chair, and a collection of yellowed photographs scattered across the floor. The photos depicted smiling guests from decades past, but their faces were scratched out, leaving only empty ovals where eyes and mouths should have been. "Sarah?" Mark called, his voice trembling. There was no answer, only the sound of soft weeping. He followed the noise to the corner of the room, but when he turned the flashlight, it revealed nothing but a cracked mirror leaning against the wall. The weeping stopped abruptly, replaced by a low, guttural laugh that seemed to echo from all directions. Mark spun around, his heart racing, but the room was empty. Panic set in as Mark retraced his steps, stumbling back through the passageway. When he emerged, room 616 was dark and silent. Sarah was gone. He ran to the door, yanking it open and sprinting down the hall. The hotel seemed endless, the corridors stretching on and on, each one identical to the last. Finally, he burst into the lobby, gasping for breath. "There's something wrong," he shouted at the night clerk. "My girlfriend, she's missing. Room 616. The clerk frowned. "Sir, there is no room 616. Mark stared at him, his mind reeling. "What are you talking about? We've been staying there all week." The clerk shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's no record of your stay. Perhaps you have the wrong hotel." Mark felt his knees weaken. "That's impossible," he whispered. This place." The clerk's expression softened, as though he were speaking to someone who had lost their mind. "Sir, you should leave." Mark stumbled out into the night, the cold air biting at his skin. He looked back at the building, its windows dark and lifeless. Had he imagined it all? The police were of little help. Without any record of their stay or proof of Sarah's presence, the case was dismissed as a misunderstanding. But Mark knew the truth. Sarah was gone. In the weeks that followed, Mark's life unraveled. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, haunted by the whispers and shadows that had plagued room 616. He searched endlessly for answers, scouring forums and archives, but every lead ended the same way: silence. The hotel, he discovered, had a long history of disappearances, each one tied to the mysterious, non-existent room 616. But no one believed him, and sometimes, late at night, Mark swore he could still hear Sarah's voice, faint and desperate, calling to him from somewhere he could never reach. The two stories, the hidden door and the room that doesn't exist, share an unsettling commonality. They both began with something alluring: a free stay, an upgrade, a promise of luxury and escape. But beneath the glittering veneer lay something far darker, something that preyed on the very human desires of curiosity, greed, and a willingness to dismiss warning signs for the sake of comfort or thrill. Both Liz and Sarah were drawn in, not by force, but by the subtle invitation of the unknown. Liz's obsession with the hidden door, Sarah's fascination with the eerie room, and even Mark's relentless pursuit of answers. These were not forced upon them. They were choices, made in the face of strange occurrences and unexplainable events. And those choices carried consequences, ones that linger far beyond the confines of Whispering Pines or Sunset Manor. Perhaps the most chilling aspect is the reflection of our own nature. Would we, like Liz, open the hidden door despite every instinct screaming against it? Or, like Sarah and Mark, stay in a room that clearly whispers of something amiss? Sometimes, the things that tempt us most come with the heaviest price, and sometimes curiosity is not just dangerous, it's fatal. I'll admit, these stories haunt me in more ways than one. Recently, I received an email that sent shivers down my spine. It was a special offer from an exclusive hotel I'd never heard of, nestled in the mountains. The photos were breathtaking: crystal clear pools, lavish rooms, sunsets that seemed too perfect to be real. Best of all, a free stay for a week. I haven't responded yet. Part of me wonders if it's just an incredible coincidence, a harmless marketing gimmick. But the stories of Liz and Sarah loop through my mind, playing over and over like a warning. I've thought about deleting the email, blocking the sender, and moving on. Yet, a small, insistent voice at the back of my mind whispers, "What if it's real? What if it's safe? Would you take the risk?" Now that you've heard these stories, I leave you with a question. Would you accept the offer, knowing what you now know? Would you stay in a room steeped in mystery, step through a door that shouldn't be opened, or trust a hotel that denies its own secrets? Or would curiosity win over caution, tempting you to uncover what lies just beyond the veil of the unknown? Think carefully, because sometimes there's no turning back once you say yes.